this section by a discussion of variables, which are one of the core concepts in programming. We use variables to store data in a computer's memory. Here are a few examples. I'm going to define a variable called students underline count and set it to 1,000. When we run this program, Python interpreter will allocate some memory and store this number 1,000 in that memory space. Then it will have this variable reference, that memory location, so that this variable is just like a label for that memory location. We can use this variable or this label anywhere in our program to get access to that memory location, and the data is stored there. So now if we print the student count and run our program from here, we will get the number of students as 1,000. Now, what kind of data can be stored in a computer's memory? Well, we have several different kinds of data. We are going to look at the built-in primitive types in Python. Primitive types can be numbers, booleans, and strings. Let me show you. So here we have a whole number. We refer to this as an integer in programming. We can also have numbers with decimal points. Let us take a look. So we can define a variable rating and we set this to 4.99. This is what we call a float or a floating point number. And this terminology is not specific to Python. In the future, when you learn a new programming language, you are going to hear these terms again. Let us take a look at an example of a Boolean is published and we set this to true or we set this to false. These are the example of Boolean values in programming. So Boolean values can either be true or false, and these are exactly like yes and no in English. We will use these Boolean values to make decisions in our programs. For example, if a user is an admin user, perhaps you may want to give extra permissions. So these are the Boolean values. Now take into account that Python is a case-sensitive language, which means lowercase and uppercase let characters have different meanings. So Boolean values should always start with a capital letter, like what you see here. If we type in false or false, these are not accepted Boolean values in Python. Only what you see here is an accepted value in Python. Finally, let us take a look at an example of a string. So, course underline name, and we set this to your string. For example, we can set this to Python programming. Whoa. So this string, as I told you before, is like text. Whenever you want to work with text in your programs, we need to surround your text with these double quotes. So these are the basics of variables. Note that all my variables are descriptive and meaningful. So students count represents the number of students for a course, or course name clearly explains that this variable holds the name of a course. One of the issues that I see a lot amongst beginner programmers is that they use mystical names for their variables. Something like this, C, N as in short form for course name. When someone else reads this code, they have no idea what CN stands for. That is a bad practice. Make sure your variable names are always descriptive and meaningful because this makes your code more maintainable. Note that I have used in this code is that I have used lowercase letters to name my variables. Also note that I have used an underscore to separate multiple words, and I've done this to make my variable names more readable. Because in Python, we cannot have a space in variable names, so we cannot have course name like this, which is why we need an underscore to put the two words together. I have used an underscore to separate multiple words, and I've done this to make my variable names more readable. Because in Python, we cannot have a space in variable names, so we cannot have course name like this, which is why we need an underscore to put the two words together. And if we remove the underscore, it is a bit hard for us to read. So we prefer to write two word and put an underscore in between them.